by the end I could tell he was doing this, and I love you.
Tarsem, this is, as you said in your intro, it's been such a long journey to get to this point, and you know, it's been over 20 years in terms of when you started making it, because the film itself took at least 5 years to make. Then it came out, it premiered in 2006, it took another 2 years to get distribution, and then it went through this hell of not being able to stream, the Blu-ray was out of print. Now we're here today with this premiere. I just wonder, what is it like for you to watch this with this audience
It's
today?
incredible. I just saw it yesterday also. I saw it in IMAX in London, but I preferred this screening a lot more because it wasn't really true IMAX. It's designed for this. And the original one was also, I think it's now more than that. So the whole history for it, the whole film was much longer. It was like a child that was refusing. I don't know if I would call a child or a devil on your back that I couldn't get off. That took 27 years working with the idea. My editor and Nico, the writer with me, are also here. Nico's wife, of course, Eiko Ishioka, who did the costumes. I'm sure she's here somewhere. Close to 27 years, and took I think I would say probably close to 17 years of location scouting, and then about 9 years of looking for the child, boy or girl, didn't matter. And I went and found the girl, and we went. I thought the fight was still then to make the movie, because I was convinced that it'll find some sort of audience, and then it didn't help Harvey Weinstein asking to see it before. When I said no, he decided to get up in the middle of the movie and walk left 5-6 times before he left, and then the critics killed it. And except who I thought would be there was Roger Ebert, who I loved, and he that year got cancer and didn't see it for another year and a half. And then when he came out and started liking it, I realized I probably made a much more polarizing film than I thought. I thought it was a lot more accessible, but the guys who killed it didn't go. But somehow, like you said, the whole thing about the internet, it started to go in that word, but I'd already lost all my money. And then I just thought, if I take another 2 years, I told my brother, we have to put this on a screen, because if people don't see it, it'll be the worst thing. So I worked for another 2 years, and then we put it on the screens ourselves. And then it kind of just disappeared. And funny enough, then a lot of the young people who saw it that time, they kind of have become critics, and a lot of the old critics died happily for me. Suddenly, and the scariest thing to me is because some of my favorite films, I was just talking to the critic there, that they're about 50% on Tomato Meter. I mean, The Birds, which is another film that I love, because anything that's polarizing ends up in that realm. And otherwise, if you go by Tomato Meters, if anything is 6 out of 10 and it's not offensive, it'll be 100% on Tomato Meter. So you end up by good film. But I guarantee you that Shawshank Redemption is not the greatest film ever. It's going to end up there. So these things just disappear. And then people kept telling me, and then last year when I went to TIFF with a new film, which is having the same story as this one, that's one the critics like that. Nobody wanted to see it. We won the award in TIFF. We have no buyers, no nothing, and that one I can't afford to take out myself. So this one we did. So maybe in 20 years we'll have another screening of that. But nobody saw it and disappeared. So. But then there, I think it's Weintraub, the person from Collider, he kept asking me that, and all they asked the same question, that why is it disappeared? And I said, I have no clue. And then I realized, I told my brother, who's also the producer, who's here. I just said, is there anything we can do to get it out there? We owned everything about it. And then I think we tried every approach that we could to Criterion or anything, but just had no access to nobody. And then out of the blue, I met the MUBI people, and they just said, we love the film. And I just said, whatever it'll take to get eyeballs on it. So I probably made another horrible deal for myself, just so that you guys could see it and then tell more people.
It's interesting.
Did I answer the question that you didn't ask?
You did. It's interesting when you said earlier about it being accessible. When I show this movie, there's show this movie to people, there's no way to set up how emotional the experience is. I mean, the way it's described, rightfully so, is about its visuals, but I'm wondering how you found those emotional through lines, because it's incredibly heavy.
It's a very hard film to put because everybody, they want to see something new, but why don't you show it to me before? Tell me exactly what it is and then I want to be surprised. So that's kind of what genres are made for. And we never had that. So I knew the biggest polarizing difference that you could see is when we released it in America and I just said, I'm done. This is the film. They made it 18 plus. And they just literally in America, so I don't know if any brought your children, you can't see it without children. They just said it has to be 18 plus. And I just said, I think they just said distinct themes, and also they said there's red blood in it. So, you know, if you kill a lot of foreigners, you don't have red blood, it works apparently. So I just thought, like with that sword, they said if you take that out, and I just said, I'm not touching a frame. So then they made it 18 here, and then when we took it to Germany, go figure, the Germans, they said it's a film for children. They put it in their category in Berlin in below 14. So there was a jury of children that are like yawning and sleeping. So it's not a thing that you can prep an audience for. So in the beginning, you try to tell them that actually, if you can take this pill and have a little bit of patience, which apparently that person there didn't. I'm so sorry. Whoever that was, it was
a bit of a
real
situation
pain for you guys. I'm sorry. But I was just wondering, whatever it was, if you take that pill, you're in for a trip. And it takes quite a lot of warming up. But if you sit through it, and especially the large screen will let you do that. You're kind of taken by the images and you're thinking it meanders too much, where the fuck is it going? And then you realize actually it has a direction when he takes out the pills. And then you kind of think, oh, is he going to? And then it gets darker and darker, but it is redeeming if you have an optimistic outlook.
And the way you're describing it, especially how different countries didn't know how to classify it, I think that just speaks to how truly unique this film is. I'm wondering if you just knew starting out that this has never been done before, 27 years ago.
Oh, yeah. For me, it was like this is going to be. I mean, I was okay with both the reactions. I always say this is the best thing since sliced bread, or it's a piece of shit. I'm okay with both. It's the terror is comme ci comme ça. And unfortunately, people when they watch Tomato Meter, they think the mediocre films are the worst, and they end up in 50%. Actually, the fear for you right now, because a lot of the young grade is coming out, it's actually recommended on the Tomato Meter. It's gone up, so I'm quite scared now on where it's going to go. It's gone up to 62.
All right, let's try to bring it back down to 50. I'd love to hear about how you cast your Alexandria. I mean, it's just one of the most remarkable children's performances. She's so young. She's learning English in real time, right? So how did you find this person and how did...
Well, I've been doing that for about 7-8 years. Whenever we were shooting commercials, I'd give people a thing and I would tell them, do not put a child out. Just go to a class and point the camera and talk to the class and tell them stories and I'll find my child. And then I was in Romania when somebody showed me and I saw this girl and I went, and I tried this, like I said, when you don't have any money ever and you really want to abuse children, cast family. I tried really hard using my nieces and nephews, but they just weren't the right age. And when I saw this girl, I was just thinking why is, and she was 6, and I realized experimenting over the years with my nieces and nephews, which I did a deep forest video, taking them around, telling them stories, I realized 4.5 was it. And after that time, they kind of know what you're doing. And then I had to wait till about 8 or 9 when you could actually find incredible actors or actresses. And I just thought, okay, so that's the age. And this girl was 5.5. And I couldn't figure out, and then they told me, oh, first, she doesn't speak English. So she's trying to understand what the person, I realized that not knowing the language bought me another year. And I just said, that's the girl I want. Then I went out there and I did one little test with her. And I only apologized to 2 people in this whole film. One was her mother, and I told her in the beginning that this is going to look really hard to you, but where I come from, we think children are a lot more malleable and ductile. You can beat them into any shape that you want. Obviously, adults that have a problem. I think nothing physical will ever happen, but when you see your child traumatized, you might start crying. And can we talk about this earlier? So I made that thing earlier with her. To just know that when she goes, I will work with her and everything. We shot the movie in sequence when I realized this is what's going to happen. The first day she saw him is the first day she saw him. Second day she saw him is the second day. I only wanted to shoot this movie in sequence because she hadn't acted and I didn't want her to act. So I just kept her away from the actors. And I tried one scene with her and I just told my brother, sell everything, we need to make it immediately because in 3 months she's a different child. So when we ended up with her in South Africa, that helped. So it's the kind of thing that it's a very natural performance, because I've only seen this ever happen in cinema once. It's a French film called Ponette. And when I saw that, I was thinking, and of course the girl's 4, so I couldn't figure it out. So this bought me the time, the year and a half, and I thought, okay, she can do whatever she wants, as long as she roughly knows where the story is going. And then if you know that, then let her meander, and we'll go the correct direction. The thing of it was, I mean, there's something that I always say in Hollywood, don't act with animals and children because they'll steal the show. But I mean, I know everybody loves Lee Pace, but you cannot imagine what he's doing here. If I had to one time ever do another commentary, I'll just show you what, because she's allowed to do anything she wants. When she moves, he has to light her. Then he has to see what she's, then he talks to her, then she moves, then he has to, like us, there's no cameras in there, there's holes in the curtains, and they're going, and Lee is doing everything.
And he's keeping the story on.
And she can meander, she'll go off, and then she would do these strange things, and I would just cross my fingers on Lee, don't let it go, and he just would pull it out from her. And then, you know, with the editor's help, with Duffy, we actually worked those scenes in and wrote the fantasies around it. And I remember that when we did that, maybe in another 15, 20 years, I might do another cut. And that cut is that there's no fantasy. Because I remember when I looked at the assembly with him in the hospital, and I just said, actually, if you want to win festival awards, just leave those 2 in there and take out everything else. Because it would have been it's the kind of thing that people like in an independent film. Oh, guy didn't have any money, so it's 2 people. I spent all my money, and instead of me trying to show it, they were like, how dare you have so much money? Like, well, I put it all out there. So for me, that was her casting process. That shoot it in sequence. And then the thing of it, whenever a scene would happen, I would always talk to her about it, and my mom would cry. But Katinka would never have any meal except with me. She would always come back by lunchtime, she would be on my lap, and we'd be eating, we'd be telling jokes, and everybody, all the adults were a lot more traumatized. And she was fine. And she's fine now.
Do you keep in touch with her?
I do, actually. Yesterday she couldn't come down to London. She works for Watterson's, the publishing thing. And then she has a hobby that you're not going to imagine what it is. Because I always call her my Russian tank, and she'll say, no, you're Romanian tank. She's this big woman. And she basically, her hobby is she loves pole dancing. And she goes for it, and she does it in competitions. So I have I only found that out about a month ago in Locarno, where we had the premiere, and I had her and I flew her and her boyfriend, because they didn't have any money to get the talent over. So her and her boyfriend came over, and that's when I found out she loves pole dancing.
That is amazing. I love it. I want to talk more about Lee Pace. I mean, as you say, it's a remarkable performance. I mean, all that going on, him kind of directing her, and then this multi-layer of grief and like whimsy and you know, like he's heartbroken, but his body is broken. How did you develop that?
He's incredible in that you know, the thing looked, I can't tell you, it looked like the gayest kid shit you've ever seen at times. So when I would do it, I was just thinking, like, you know, I would tell Lee, this is really serious, he's actually dying. He never questioned it. I just told him, this is serious, this is played like this, and he just trusted me completely, because when I told him just watch one film. I showed him Ponette, and I just told him the thing that was difficult for him was, which I'm sure if anybody's seen anything on the internet you would know, is that when we cast him, he'd only played one part. He played a woman in a film called Soldier's Girl. And when we did this, I wanted basically, I thought I'll find somebody from a student, because I wanted nobody to know that this person could walk. So Lee Pace turned out, so we created an identity for him, and then we told everybody that he can't walk. So we changed the script, that the hero of the film is her father. So that's the guy who plays all the time through. Whereas we had already written that halfway through, when he finds out her dad is dead, he comes in and he takes that over. So that was the only actor I told, that everybody's going to think you're the lead, but you're not. And are you okay with taking the part? And he said, okay. So when Lee came, I told him that we all had such a great time where we stayed in South Africa, but he was kept separate. He had to sit in a wheelchair, and it used to take an hour to get him in. He would come in and he was really, really depressed. So the first day, actually one thing that freaked me out was the first day she saw him, I didn't realize how scared children are of handicaps. she got really scared of him and wouldn't come to him. Then I just said, okay, just stay outside that window, don't come in and sit. Then you see that she actually starts from further, then she sits, and by the end,
and you don't see
I
his
was
face.
thinking, like, don't touch him. She just wanted to kiss him. So I had to stop that. But that grew. So, but it's the kind of trouble that if you were making a normal film, a Hollywood film, or any structural film that a producer is paying for, the kind of problem you would have had, you wouldn't have been able to address. She showed up the first day and she had the front 2 teeth missing. And I went like, you know what, that's great. We'll just put that into the mystic, that the mystic strength are in his teeth, the old man has the teeth, and we were working all the time on the MRR and PHIN3, that's also her. She's dyslexic like me, and she thought the E was 3. And then the next day when we shoot the next scene, I said, you know what, we should fill the bottle. And she throws it away because she thinks he said 3. So all those things were all coming from her, but she's just being a child. But Lee had to field those. My favorite scene in the film is the one about the wafers from the church. That thing that she gives him. And it just literally, she was just, she was saying, I said, what's that? She said, that's a frog catching a butterfly. No idea. So she would do these things and Lee would take them on. And that just kept taking it further and further and further. So for me, I just thought like, Lee, no matter how many songs you sing about him, he needs more. So he was the guy, so nobody knew that he could walk. I mean, the cameraman didn't know, the production, none of the actors. So when he would come in, it would take about an hour to get him into position and act. And this wasn't really, to be fair, it wasn't for method acting or anything. It was for the child. Because if anybody has been on a film set, you know how no matter, especially there's some film students here, no matter how dark you have people dressed in swastikas or whatever you want, it'll be traumatic, and then after some time you start not having key with them, and if you know the guy's playing a cripple, you'll get on top of the bed and start lighting, and I just wanted everybody to walk around him like delicately, so that she could feel it. So it was more for her, and not anybody else. And then on the day that we said that he could walk, I was thinking like, I forget, there was still an Indian, a guy about 8 years ago who was trying to stand for politics against Trump. He was a Republican who was going to announce, and he thought he'd tell it with his family, and he said like, I'm going to run for president, expecting some really good reaction. They kind of went like, yeah. And that's what happened with her. I was thinking like, we're going to tell her he can walk. When I said that, you know, he can walk, and because every day was so incredibly weird and different. She would say, oh yeah, that's just another thing. The guys, the crew, the cameraman, I've been with him for 18 years. He was my loader. And just 2 weeks before shooting, I upgraded him to be the cameraman. He had never shot anything before, and I just said, I know exactly what we're going to do. Just bring us. He said, and he wasn't confident, so I told him, look, we'll do a commercial. So we did a commercial a week before. So you good? He said, good. And I just went in, and I knew how I was going to grade it. And I had it for 17 years. I knew exactly what we were going to do. So I just left that to him. But Lee's thing, when we told it, everybody was like, shocked and crying, but Katinka was like, wait, like, oh yeah, what's for lunch? But actually, there was another person who was angry with me, who I said sorry to, but I'm sure he never forgave me, is that we had our rap party before we shot the movie. So when we were there, I just told everybody, I don't know when my money runs out or what part of the world we'll be in. So our rap party is before the first day of the shoot. And on the first night when we were having it, I looked and I saw Lee Pace in this corner in the wheelchair. And I was all embarrassed because there's another guy with him on the wheelchair. And the guy's talking to him, and then Lee calls me over, and I go over, and that is the focus puller's dad. And the focus puller's dad was saying like, this is the guy who has balls to cast a handicapped guy to move. So then Lee tells me, we've got to tell him. I said, you know what, I've got people here for 18 years I've worked with. They don't know. I'll take the heat. So when that happened, I was just watching for that guy in the room. I could see how he pissed. Well, I went up there and I said, I'm so fucking sorry. I just, whatever you want, he just turned on. And he never forgave me then. I don't think he ever will. But I just had to tell him that it had to be something that had to be done. It was for no other reason. But I think he was just crying, trying to get away from that guy instead. This is just another horrible director. He did not cast a handicap. It is just like, I don't know.
Tarsem, this movie's a miracle. this is just the hospital stuff. I mean, and then you go out to 27 other countries. So how do you get your crew and your cast and the young Alexandria Leap? How do you get them all around the world? For
I had a rule, which is why I changed my cameraman at the last second. It was my college professor who did the cell with me, was supposed to do this. And then towards that time, I told my brother that we make one deal with everybody, which means the loader, the focus puller, the janitor, anybody who does anything, everybody had the same paycheck and the same contract for travel. So we all traveled first class, or we all traveled economy. And all I can tell you is people will lie down in front of a truck for you if you don't, if they think that there's nobody getting special treatment. So we all went at the time in India when nobody, this is Fahrenheit country, right? Yeah. So when we went out there the first day of shoot, it was 118 degrees Fahrenheit while raining. So that was 100. You think you know what that temperature is, you don't. Eventually, we started shooting there, and the only difference was with the crew, that when they'd go back, there was this hotel chain that they closed at that time because nobody ever wants to go there at that time. I think it's 2,800 or 3,800 US dollars per night for the rooms. I got them for $90. So these crew had private pools. So they didn't give it because we had that in the contract, that everybody stays exactly the same level and we travel exactly the same. So that was one thing I had going for me with the crew, that wherever we went, they were incredible. And it's a group I had worked with for close to 23, 24 years. I did lots of commercials. I blew all my money up. And then
this is self-financed.
It's all self, not a single dollar from anybody else, and that's not. And when I was trying to show it to people, I was trying to bring a box for you guys, but I couldn't find it in time out here, which is because when I had to pitch it, Fincher would help me to go and talk to people to see if they were. And the problem was I would say, they would say, is that the script? It's like 20 pages. I said, no, it's not really the script, but I have this box. And I said, this is the things that she stole. And I would try to tell the story, and that's not the conversation you have with the producer. And they said, so where are you shooting it? Like in 3, 4, and I was like, maybe 20. I turned up in 28 countries. So they were just like, it was never going to happen. So when I saw her, I just said like, and the closest thing that happened that time was my girlfriend had dumped me. And I just thought, like I was saving all this money thinking I'm going to have children and stay with this money now. I have no idea what the money's for. So I just told my brother, just cash it, and this is 2 tickets to immortality. It's your genes or your memes. So the genes aren't going to make it, let's have the memes have a go. And that's what we did. So we just put it all into that film. So what was the question?
Locations. No, but
the travel.
Yes.
That travel. I cannot tell you any of those stories because they were horrendously wonderful. The reason when people look at this, they go like, oh, why are you shooting green screen? Why doesn't everybody go there and everything? It's not possible. I couldn't do it. I don't think anybody. You need a crazy person with a crazy time in his life with more money than is good for him. And then you can part the two. So for me, that was the only thing, that for the travel, I just knew that I had a rough idea. So I shot her part immediately in India. And then I thought, okay, what is these guys' backstories? Then I started thinking, this guy's backstory is this, the Indian is that. So all that took another 4 years of filming.
Wow.
And the locations are very difficult to get to.
Yeah.
And all I can tell you is if you're a location scout or anything, the first thing you look for is not the location, but where will the trucks park? And then where everybody else stay. But then you look, is there a location nearby? And this one I just went, this is the location, I'm going to work it out. And we just went on this magical mystery tour, and just everywhere we went, that was it. It's just that, like, I don't think anybody can shoot. In fact, to do the poster, which for 2 years after everybody killed it, nobody would take the movie for free. I worked for another 2 years so I could get it on, I think about 10 or, Ajit Singh, was it 16 screens? For US? Yeah, so I tried to get it on about 16 screens. So what I did was I just thought like, okay, after 2 years we'll take it out on those screens. So I thought I'd do a poster, where Wallace gets killed in those steps. That is, if anybody knows, that's actually a well, and they're about 300-400 years old. So I was going somewhere and I saw these cows drinking, I see this pattern, and I just said like, what's that? They go like, oh, this design, it goes down, and I get, well, how old are they? They said about 400 years old, and I just said, how down does it go? He said, oh, way down. I said, how down? I said, wait. I said, what is it? They said, basically it was for taxing purposes. From about 300-400 years ago, they knew where the water level was. So if the water level from the range went from what to what, you walking down would dictate on how much the taxes should be. So I said, to find out a place where there's a drought. They said, yeah, but it's bumfuck nowhere. And I said, good, let's go. I looked at it and I just said, I have to shoot here. And then, when, of course, it had been there for 400 years. Nobody's ever shot there in any Bollywood film or anything. And then when we did it, 2 years, everybody had heard about it in Bollywood, and they just went there. They said, he shot this thing. I guess it's cool. So they'd come there with like 300-400 extras, do a dance, and then suddenly it was out to that location that sat there for 400 years that nobody ever filmed. And the moment we filmed, I went out there to take a picture for the poster after 2 years, and the guy who was the guide out there, he was telling me like, I'll give you a guide out here. And he was speaking only in Hindi, and I told him, I don't need it, I've been here. He said, no, I can tell you things. I said, okay. So then he started with the spiel. And somewhere in between, I realized he's talking about my film. He said like, oh, I won't do the Hindi thing, but he was basically saying like, oh yeah, there was a film here, nobody shot here, then somebody from Bollywood shot here, and then there was a film, the first film shot here was called Duffel. And after Duffel, and I was thinking, so me and my nieces and nephews, we call this Duffel. So,
Tarsem, so many of your films always have images that like no one has ever dreamed of. Like elephants can swim. Like what the bed of arrows. How do you come up with things like that?
I did a dry run for this film for 17 years, like I said. So I did a Coke commercial where the commercial's idea was that, and the same editor cut it, where an elephant swims up to a woman and she's sitting on a pier with Coca-Cola, and he puts peanuts there and he takes her Coke. Because I knew that elephant, and I said the idea is the same, that a donkey could walk up to a woman and give her a carrot and take the Pepsi, but nobody knew that elephants can swim. So the idea was to do that. But to go and get them, they won't swim if you tell them to swim. They usually stay in these islands, that the Andaman Islands, they use them for lumbering, and if they can smell a female in heat, because they take a long time, they have one child per decade or something, so they will swim to her. So that's how it's been captured. So I found out where it was. So I shot 7 years ago, and for every time I went to these places, I would do commercials, and I would give people money, and because commercials are well paid, and I just say, I'll come back. And like he says in The Godfather, that day may never come, but I will come back one day and I'll ask you for a favor. And all I can tell you is, don't do it like that. When I went back, not a single place was any of those alive. Anybody moved on, so I just had to reinvent the wheel in every place. But I knew that they swim. So the advantage that I had was that me and Nico over the years had reverse engineered. That's why I think a lot of critics really hated it, because it looks like we put the cart ahead of the donkey, but it was intentionally. So for me, it was just like, okay, we put them on an island, and he has to get off the island, so we'll use the elephant. So now on the island, what they're doing, they've been sent away. Then each guy's backstory, I didn't know. So we were just making those as we were going along, but I had the rough structure laid out. And Lee and Katinka did the rest.
It's crazy that critics couldn't also pick up on that it's an homage and tribute to cinema. I mean, like that self-reflexive element is so clear.
The line between homage and rip-off is very thin. So they'll look at that and they'll go like, oh, he's taken that scene from Baraka, and he's taken this thing from that, and all I can tell you, how many people here seen Baraka?
Show it in 70mm.
Wonderful, right? Let me tell you, do you know where that song comes from? I'm talking about when the guys are doing chak, 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 that thing. Do you know how it came about? Because when everybody saw Baraka, I had a beef with it. Because everybody looked at that and they just said, oh, it's such a traditional little Balinese dance, this thing. The truth of the matter is, that was something that somewhere in the 1940s, a hippie from Germany in Birkenstocks went to Bali and went like, you guys need to do something cultural to get tourists here. He taught them that thing. And then those guys embraced it and started to tell their own stories. So everybody who would talk to me about Baraka, I said, I love that film. But they were like, that cultural thing. I said, like, that's about 30 years old, you know. Nobody knew. I just said, okay, I'm going to use it and I'll talk about it. But I didn't realize the backlash would come like, didn't you see Baraka? We've seen that. And I go like, yeah, but I needed somebody to go mad and give you directions. And I just thought, I have no idea what they're doing. So I worked with that guy and I just said, now do your whatever you want to do, but you're going to work out to say that you're going to explain through your people what a pyramid looks like, what the Great Wall looks like. And I found 3 or 4 cliches. I worked with him and then we had a whack at it. And then I just knew that I had that guy in my back pocket, and when I went to the upper Himalayas, I saw this really incredible, I think it's called moonscape. This thing was all roughed up, and at the bottom of it was a stream where there was a green field. And I just went, oh, that's great. So they can just run away the mystic and get high on the the drugs, run into the green, and I'll go out there, and some years from now, we'll go to Bali and we'll pick up that shot. That's what we did. So just bring it out there, get out there, pick it up in the body. So it was to a certain extent, the critics were right, who were looking for not about meandering. I said two things to them. One, if you see something look like this, give the benefit of the doubt to the filmmaker to say like it's meandering for a reason. And second, have you ever talked to a 5-year-old? and empower them in a way that you need something from them? Because usually when you tell them a story, it's go to sleep. You tell them whatever you want. But if you need something from them, boy, do they come up with weird shit.
At what point did you decide I need to paint an entire city houses blue?
Actually, it's a Brahmin city, and a lot of cities have them, but this is the biggest one. It's a reflective color, and there the temperature is hotter than what I told you, and it's unbearably hot. So they always paint their houses blue legally. So I knew that we couldn't afford to paint that because it looks blue, but nothing like this. So when we went there for the recce the 2 months before, I made an announcement to the whole village that we have all the paint in the world. They could paint their houses whatever color they want. We knew they could only paint it blue. So we gave them a lot of blue buckets and they all painted their own houses. It is the blue city, but like people haven't painted the house for 20 years or 30 years. One is more blue than the other. But when we gave free paint, everybody just did it for us.
I want to give the audience time for questions, but I do want to ask just to wrap up this part, why this early silent age of cinema, like why did you choose that as the backdrop?
A lot of people give me that credit that you really must like stunt people. I'm so sorry to say, actually it had nothing to do with it. The original story when I had it from, I was looking for a time where you can read the manipulation of a person's body language. Before cinema came along, before even literature, if you've ever seen to street vendors and all that, or live musicians, when they play to a crowd before there's got music, they use your body language to give you what you need. And every time it's different. But when cinema comes along, that's pretty much it. So I wanted to make a movie about the body language of the person, which is so transparent that you can see where the story needs to go. Now I'm meandering. What was the question?
The backdrop of stunt work and early Hollywood cinema.
So then I was all the time thinking, okay, it just kept becoming this is like silly comic, but it was becoming more and more comic that, the person is trying to tell them something serious, but she's imagining a musical piece, and that is because anywhere I went, you couldn't find a child who hadn't seen cinema. Unless there was a special child or a special needs child or a really special situation, I couldn't find one. I would make it up and it would be bad if I made the movie contemporary, where the other film, Yo-Ho-Ho, is a contemporary film. So I just couldn't make it contemporary. Then I just thought, okay, let's go backwards to a time where no genre is defined. And this is the guy who's worked on the set, so he's plagiarizing whatever he's seen about like a Red Indian doing this, and he says Red Indian, she understands it to be an Indian from India. And then when Lee was going at it, Lee went like, he should have a wigwam, and I have no idea what a wigwam is. So he just did it on the voiceover. So I just used whatever I could steal, if you want to call it inspired by. I just took it from those guys and put it in. So for me, the stuntman's thing was, and usually for me, which is pretty bad, I had the beginning and the ending. From a long time ago. I just didn't have a film in the middle until I saw Katinka. So I always thought an abstracted version up front with Beethoven, so I did a commercial for Reebok where I used that in high speed and I realized how magical it was. So I thought an aftermath of an accident that you don't understand clear until the last scene, and then you realize that when they're showing his little film, and such a lame little stunt and he got hurt on it. And that's it. So for me, when that became something, I just thought like I needed to give some form of hope on where does this girl go out. And I just thought she basically learns from that once her mom trying to tell her to move on with their life. God knows if her mom lied to her, and God knows if that's Lee or no. She basically turns around and imagines that, the reason she likes Michael Bay more than any art house cinema is because she thinks he does all the stunts. So, and it would have made it more clearer in the beginning. I was going to put a voice over an older woman saying like, this is probably not how the stories happened, but this is how I remember. I tried it, it just looked really lame, especially after that black and white sequence. I just thought like, no, audiences are smart enough to understand it's a child's perspective. But this is the choir. You guys are familiar with the subject matter. So for me, for the critics and all, they were seeing it out cold, and they were just thinking, this is just not going anywhere, without giving it the benefit of the doubt, which I think they paid for. They just went the other way. And it's okay with me if you hate it. It's comme ci, comme ça that terrifies me.
Well, I love that you maintain that it's ambiguous in the end. And do you? And I know you don't want to answer one way or the other, but do you find people, take to one side or the other when they that you hear this?
I'm okay with that. One side or the other is way okay. Some of my favorite films are that polarizing. Like I said, it's when you end up at 50% the tomato meter, people think it's a comme ci comme ça film. I said no. It's read the reviews. It's 1 star, 10 stars, 1 star, 10 stars, and that's why it comes up to 50. And so I just embraced that. I was okay with that.
Let's take some questions from the audience, and we